You know what? Oh, God.
All right, now we're good.
So.
We're good? We're good. All right.
Yeah, just before he was shifting
I
around.
got
Yeah, so he's
people
not in
here.
breach anymore. Then he's high. Sorry.
Okay. Maybe not okay.
Unrelated to- Oh, good. Yeah.
I will call this meeting to order. I see the time is 1:01 p.m. on Thursday, April 3rd. The Resource Development Strategy Committee. I'd like to acknowledge our meeting takes place today on the traditional territory of Chehalis. Are there any late items to introduce from any of our committee members today? Seeing none, I'll go to approving the agenda. Motion by Stephanie, second by Councillor Jackson. Any discussion on the agenda? All in favor of the agenda, and that carries unanimously. We have item 5, adopt the minutes. Everyone had a chance to have a quick read through the minutes from our last meeting. I have a motion to approve or adopt the minutes. Motion by Stephanie, second by Christie. Any discussion on that? I'll call the vote. All in favor, and that also carries. Which gets us to the heart of our meeting, items for discussion. Updated draft of the resource development strategy. I'll turn it over to community services.
Sure.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you. I wanted to just touch on a few things from the last meeting. I think that will sort of help guide before we get into too much more. I reached out to our contacts at the province regarding Richard's question about the property boundaries. So I just wanted to share a bit of that. And he said that the issues with projects being set out of municipal boundaries is that contractually the municipality is required to retain the title to and ownership of any assets resulting from RMI funds. So she stated that if there are projects in other municipalities that are outside of municipal bounds, it could be that they have memorandums of understanding or other agreements in place that would then put it in line with the RMI funding agreement. But she's been our contact for quite a few years now, and she hasn't had any projects come up in any communities outside of the boundaries in that time. That was just a bit of a response on, extensive inquiries. You're welcome.
So if we wanted to, we would need some kind of relationship with somebody or some relationships maybe if we were looking at a expanded trail system or signs and stuff to have the ability to put it in on land outside of the village boundaries.
And then, since our last meeting, staff were reviewing our last, sort of like our existing resort development strategy and where our budget was at and things like that. And over the last term, we accrued a large amount of interest. Bad for buyers, I guess, but good for investors. So our RMI budget from what it was before actually has more funds in it for the existing approved projects. So what staff had been discussing, and it was identified as one of the primary most favored on the survey that we did online for the public engagement, that the canoe kayak launch area could be worked into our lagoon development project that's already in existence. So that would shift to A, being able to be accomplished a little sooner, and B, give a bit more flexibility in adding potentially some of the other ideas that we were talking about for this new RDS.
Well, that's good news. Really good news, actually. Hats off to our staff and for investing, I guess, the money really wisely and And I guess with the combination of costs coming in on the lagoon projects, it's got some surplus, so that's something, so we don't have to put that project into
We won't have to
this
put it in the
current
new
strategy.
RDS
We
strategy.
it can be added in and amended to the previous one.
Mhm. Yeah, we had some fairly broad categories in the last one, so this project would fit under the proposed scope of work there. I wanted to highlight that because it was
Any
in the draft,
comments,
but
discussion from our committee on that?
Nope, it follows under like RMI
Yeah.
guidelines, so.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, that one, that idea does fall under.
yeah, I don't see a downside to doing that at all. Gives us a little more flexibility for this current strategy,
yeah.
and it just gets that project maybe underway a little sooner.
Yeah, our operations manager is in contact because a dock was just announced up in Lake Country with some really nice accessibility features as well as the canoe kayak launch area. So he's now reached out to the company that did that and is working on getting some pricing and some information. The company's out of 100 Mile House, but they've actually done some work in the village before, so they're
Okay.
sort of familiar with the waterfront area. And they'll be, looking at potential best locations and options, and then I imagine it will come directly to the council table.
I'll have to make a note to keep our accessibility committee in the loop.
Yeah.
If it is a dock for this, then it has those features built into it. I like
Yeah, the only thing I suggest is making sure we have proper signage of all the lake and the dangers of the lake, which is super imperative.
signage would be good.
Absolutely.
And so the idea would be to have accessibility features within that dock, that would be ideally.
That would be ideal, but I know when I saw the pictures of the one that was done in Lake Country, it wasn't from a sand beach area, so of
Right.
course that's something that we'll just need to take into consideration. It doesn't make sense for this
Yeah.
to be accessible if there's no accessible route to get
To
to
there,
it.
yeah, for sure.
So, yeah,
For sure.
those things will all be on my
That does
mind.
make some sense. If you have to go up and down stairs, we don't need an accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, we'll see. I look forward to, yeah, go forth, add that to the last program. That's great. Okay, so that would take that item off of what we had been considering previously, so
Yes.
that leaves some more room for other things potentially.
yeah, one of the other conversations we had at the last meeting was about sort of like an additional fountain or water feature, something of the sort. So we're working on getting a bit more information. The one company that did the existing one gave me some options. They did state though that we would need to run a new conduit into the lake. They do have some different programmable color changing light options. And the recommendation would be a pair, so like an additional fountain on each side of the current one. They're custom quoted, but they're around $20,000 each, and then plus the light sets.
May I say something on that?
Go ahead.
Sure, yeah, so it wasn't so much the fountain idea, it was more about the wow factor idea of like 150-meter jet LED light. With, like, and so like for instance, on at 6 o'clock at night, you could have like the Canadian flag waving through the water with O Canada singing, for instance, right now. Like the capabilities, we're very lucky that, for instance, like large water jet pump systems have got a lot more affordable, and there's nothing like that, and separating ourselves from something that other communities that are RMI driven that would separate us. So that was
Does this firm do the water jet things
So I
as
reached
well?
out to the other company that
Yeah.
you suggested. They don't do anything floating, so theirs would have to be a whole separate sort of like installation
Okay.
on like
Okay.
on a landscape, not on waterscape.
Oh,
They don't do anything floating.
oh,
So theirs would more be of like an installation at the plaza, say, or at another existing spot somewhere along the lagoon.
okay.
Jace was reaching out to one other company, and I haven't heard if there's another option on that. the cost estimate, but judging from just what like these costs are, it would be, I would anticipate, over a couple $100,000.
Yeah.
But I know what you're
Yeah,
saying,
going-
and that's kind
yeah.
of what I was thinking too, like, it would be better if it was like, oh,
Yeah, it
at
would be-
6 o'clock
keep it
each
the
night,
same, keep
then,
the same as it is,
then
like,
this.
or like, I'm just trying to separate this, like, people would want to come to Harrison to see something like that.
Mhm.
It would be exciting at like certain time, 8 o'clock at night on a Saturday evening,
Yeah.
and to see some sort of amazing water show out there, using our lagoon instead of just sitting there. This is just an idea to put forward.
I like the idea, and you and I guess operations are still digging into that to find out.
We
the
are trying to
limits
find out
and
what-
restrictions, what we actually,
And where, I think then I
from
was
concept to reality is could be a
yeah,
little bit of a longer walk.
and I know I was the one who wanted it like in the water,
Yeah.
Disneyland style, but I'm just struggling to find a company besides
I
the ones that do mountains.
I do have a gentleman that we're very fortunate he lives in this community. He travels the world, he does massive events, and he actually knows the gentleman that, for instance, did the Bellagio. And so I can reach out to him.
Yeah, if you can
and-
find the company name.
Yeah, there are local Canadian companies that do stuff like that. So I can give that, for instance, I assume it's probably not gonna be for this, but for long term, it'd be something for us to take a look at.
That sounds good.
I think it's one of these projects that if we started with a couple more fountain sprinkler types things that are lit and then maybe changing lights, then and if we need an installation, actually, it's something we could start adding to, just like lights on the lake, start modest and keep improving.
If we have an end goal or an end plan of what we want to look like, yeah, typically, like, for instance, like the Bellagio cost $15 million. Like I just go back to that because that's world renowned, right?
Yeah.
And I always go back to I would like Harrison to be world renowned,
Yeah.
right? So of course we wouldn't have the space to do something like that, but I'm assuming something of that magnitude for our community would be $1 million. So it would be,
If we have to bring in additional power or additional fountains.
it would be like a 3 or 4 year plan.
Then I think we need to, if it's possible, we know if we can have an installation, whatever that might look like, to plan it in advance and start staging it over several years would be a very interesting project.
Yeah, it would be
Yeah.
really interesting for Harrison for sure.
Okay, yeah. And that's interesting.
Yeah, I'll send you some, Chrissy, I'll send you some information on that.
That sounds
Yeah.
good. I just want to confirm if there's anything else directly out of the minutes. I don't think there is. Oh, we talked about the mention of disc golf in part of the recreation. I had a really good conversation at the start of this week with someone who designs disc golf courses. So he's worked on a number of projects, including Raptors Knoll, it's called, out of Langley. So that one now hosts like world tournaments. So originally I was like, depending on the space and things, we could get away with just like a 9-hole. But he said, if you're going to do it and if you want it to really be a tourist draw, that he would recommend doing the 18 holes. So that then it can be sort of offered as that tournament space. And I guess once you have tournament space, then you just kind of more opportunities for people to come outside of that event to just want to practice and train at it. So was away, he's actually coaches a disc golf team, so he's down in the southern states right now. So I'm just waiting on a Class D estimate from him.
Okay.
For what we could kind of ballpark for that, to then give a bit more of a solid foundation number for that project. The splash pad project cost estimate was based on one quote received, so I feel confident in that number. I had another thought, but maybe it could just be just a slight tweaking of the McCombs Drive Recreation title. I wanted it to not be necessarily quite as limiting, because I know we've been talking about just sort of some overall parks and trails connectivity. But not necessarily needing to add a whole nother project title, but if the committee kind of think is sort of seeing where I'm going with just trying to have a bit better of like that ecotourism, the connectivity between the trails and the parks. So just to probably put a bit more funds potentially into this, if some's freed up, and just rework that project title a bit to also maybe have us looking at even just some around the Miami River Greenway, if there's improvements that need to be made there, upgrades, as I think we have to call it with RMI money, upgrades and amenities that could be added potentially along there, and just sort of in that, the plan for it to be tied to the interpretive signage. So even just like installing those like that signage should be happening in those other areas, sort of all around town, and then sort of, formulating that network for tourists to be able to, check out all the.
We have to make sure, because it has to go to the resort or near the resort area, because like Fernie just got declined for community trail improvements because they were primarily serving locals. So if we have to go, it has to be a corridor to.
Yeah, and, and I think it will sort of be meant to be connecting between sort of like, Spirit Trail. In Kimberly, they've got a trail that goes from like top to all the way down. So as long as it's all sort of part of that recreational opportunities that we're looking to provide, then that should be.
And Radiant Hot Springs, they were declined a splash pad due to the fact that it wasn't helping tourism in shoulder seasons. So that was in 2019. I don't know if that's changed since then. So it's something we can take a look at.
I guess we'll
So
see.
many of our things, so many of our projects have still been around the summertime, so.
So maybe, I'm just saying that they were, I guess I was just doing some research and I noticed that, so I just wanted to. I don't know if what would say that is in a tourism corridor where I don't know where theirs was.
We do have obviously the fountains and that kind of stuff is much more than just the peak summer months, as is the Lillooet, if the direction is right, west streetscaping is a year round, obviously. Streetscaping
typically is being approved everywhere. Other than I did find there was one, Golden, tried to do some streetscaping beautification, but it wasn't in their tourism corridor. And they were declined. So the tourism corridor elements were approved, but the general upgrades were rejected.
What's our experience with our strategy in the past being accepted or pushed back from the province on?
I don't know of anything that has been pushed back.
We haven't had any pushback.
So that's good.
No, it's good to be aware.
I'm just looking up. I'm not saying what these ones would be. This is what I was just reading. So.
No, it's good to have a reality check and just make sure we have.
Infomere had roadway upgrades declined as basic infrastructure.
You can't do anything like that. They're getting
Not
a lot
today.
of push from, they're getting a lot of push from the RMI communities about some funds being able to be used for more of those general upgrades that are required in tourism communities, but we're not there yet.
I attended an RCC mayor's meeting this morning. That's Resort Collaborative Communities.
Community collaborative.
I've heard multiple interpretations of that acronym. It's the mayors of the resort communities, and they're trying to push to have infrastructure included as a basic infrastructure when increased demands for tourism impact infrastructure, that be part of acceptable for RMI funding. And I think part of that meeting was I heard from one of the mayors that the Minister of Tourism or whoever's responsible for this actually spoke in the assembly recently saying, this is a really great program to have, and this RMI funding, and it makes perfect sense because it doesn't burden the taxpayers of local municipalities with the costs of providing enhancing tourism. So pretty happy with that. So the province seems today behind these programs.
I just have one more note on projects. One of the large tourism challenges that we've had over the past few years has been not the visitor experience with paid parking, because paid parking is really common in communities that are tourism based, but it's been about the experience with the contractor and some of those challenges. So staff had already been sort of just like thinking like we have an agreement for this season, and we've just sort of been thinking about ways that we could sort of ensure a better visitor experience, basically. And so looking at ways that that could happen would be sort of retaking the control instead of contracting it out, hiring one of our own, a village employee to be that person who's out there, knowing that then it wouldn't so much be about writing tickets or trying to follow up with collections. It would just be about being friendly, greeting them, letting people know where they can pay for parking. And then in my brain, recognizing the balance between tourism and residents. I know that when we start to look at what that would mean, it would be a bit more upfront costs to purchase, call it 8 parking meters, say. So I reached out to the RMI project coordinators to ask if anyone has ever looked at something like this by having that as like a tourism infrastructure purchase. And they did say that it would be supported because it would fall under visitor management. It's an interesting concept.
Wow.
I thought it was maybe a bit of a stretch, but I wanted to just kind of highlight that this is something that staff had already been potentially leaning in the direction of. And if there was a way to put, say, $50,000 from RMI towards that infrastructure, I think that would be a really nice starting point to relooking at that program. And then I just started talking more to Keely. I was like, imagine if it was like, just you show up here in the summer and there's someone there with like a branded apron on, and they're like, hi, welcome to Harrison. Like, this is the nearest ramp up the lagoon. I see you have a stroller. There's a pay parking meter right central in the plaza, and then there's one down there. If you have any questions, let me know. You can also pay by phone, maybe that would be the dream. And then like they can have some stickers from like Tourism Harrison, and they would have just sort of like a baseline knowledge of what's around. If they're trying to find something, it wouldn't be someone coming here who doesn't live in the community or has never been to the community, who's just there to write them a ticket, essentially.
Would you know that like the cost, like what is our cost of having a third party controlling it? Is out of the whole general revenue of paid parking?
We have so many different line items in our agreement with them, so we sort of know a little bit just on like the revenue generated for the most part. But once you sort of take out all those costs, even for us to pay someone, I think it will be beneficial. And again, it's frustrating when you have a contractor and then you're having people write in and being like, I don't want to come back there because someone needed to use the washroom. So we went to the washroom first and they were like helping someone. And then by the time they went to like, even like get their stuff to unload, they already have a ticket.
Yeah.
So their day's kind of ruined. If they have a ticket on their dash that says they have to pay $50, they're then probably not gonna go spend any kind of money anywhere else because they are already set back on their day.
There has been little improvements going forward with like the 15-minute parkings, but before that, it was uncontrollable. It was we had staff feeling like they were babysitters and big arguments between like village, or not so much village, or paid parking attendants and staff. It wasn't very fun. Last year was a little bit better, but yes, any way to keep revenue local is always a positive.
Yeah, and we've tried to work with them about that, but then of course they're getting their own messaging from their
Yeah, not a
internal
very good village.
staff, so
Not a
it's
very good experience.
yeah, so it's been tricky, so that was just something I wanted to mention today.
Stephanie and I were talking, perhaps maybe we should be looking at more like where do we see Harrison in 10 years from now? RMI seems like we do these 3-year projects, and we should be perhaps looking, where do we see Harrison 10 years from now as a tourism perspective? Like what goals do we have? Because going forward, like it's really difficult to be like, okay, this is what we have for 3 years, and then 3 years later, this is what we're gonna do 3 years. We don't really have like the goals are great, and whoever wrote the goals are bad, like they were really good, but 10 years from now, what are the goals? And the
So that was
You have
actually
a
one of
bit
the
of a longer
questions.
plan, right? Do you have a longer term?
Well, we have our 5-year strategy, right? And then, but that's not really like resort development strategy, that's like tourism marketing strategies. That was actually one of the pieces I was gonna bring up is, are you allowed to use those funds for the creation of like a more purpose-built, like 15-year strategy? Like this is how, you know, say RMI funds are actually, like, who knows if they're gonna continue for 15 years. This could be something where, you know, they decide not to renew it 3 years down the road, but if we could have if you had this, you know, strategy built out, even if there was other funding sources that came available, so let's say RMI stops, then you could continue to look at the strategy and see how you could continue to build and grow your tourism amenities in a, like, making sure that you're doing it in a sustainable way so that you're you're not just, you know, doing projects ad hoc. It's like they're really purpose driven, and you know, you've got this overall goal of creating this great community. But I don't know if the creation of a strategy like that would be within the scope of RMI.
I saw that somewhere, but we look at so many that then sometimes I'm like, maybe I just thought that would be beneficial.
Yeah.
It does say clearly that up to 15% of project spending can be allocated to design or planning, so that would be like on each given project, but that sort of leads me to think that
That's gonna be something
that there could be, should be.
Like Tourism Tourism Tofino just worked with the municipality to develop a 50-year sustainable tourism strategy, which is just a crazy long time.
Yeah.
But so yeah, maybe we don't want to do 50 years, maybe we want to look a little bit shorter term than that, but just making sure that when we're, you know, trying to come up with these strategies, that they're not just, like I said, ad hoc projects, that they're purpose driven. And, you know, when we go into it each year, then we're like, okay, this is what we really need to accomplish for these few years, and kind of have some long-term goals kind of set, and then you can kind of fit little projects in within each of the 5-year scopes or 3-year scopes.
You said.
Yeah, I like that idea, and I think that's what you were trying to get at too, Councillor Jackson, like, look more into the future, right? And then start at kind of like what steps we can first do today.
The RMI money originally was a telephone call, Victoria had a contact there, and we'd get things done that way.
Yeah.
As he moved on, now we get into 10, 15 years later, governments, as we all know, they're planning for day to day. I mean, it's really sad when you think about it, we're in that situation. But I think the thing that makes me the proudest is this resort development strategy has really worked. Our staff has really spent the money very wisely. We see it. I mean, we have the new plaza, the beachfront, and all of that. I mean, that's fantastic. We could have never afforded that in Harrison. But people just wouldn't be able to pay for it. But I like long-term planning. But I think for the next 4 or 5 years, that's kind of gone by, unfortunately.
Yeah, so if you're looking kind of like a
Yeah.
15, 20 year probably
I kind of think
vision.
what all these projects over the last number of years and what we're anticipating now, I could look at them and tie together a longer range plan. Like I see really making the lagoon a focal point, the beach a focal point for the tourism experience. I see, you know, the enhancements at the boat launch. If we have a kayak launch, we get sort of Harrison being the, if you want to go on to Harrison Lake, got to come to the village because we're set up to, you want to go stand up paddleboarding or you want to throw a boat in or whatever, it becomes more that focal point. And I see that kind of lining up in that way. Yeah, the big missing part is to really have more control over the hot springs experience that gives the village its name.
That's the game changer.
That's the big one. That would be huge, and still having those conversations with the resorts to hail us. That's the big one, and if that's out there, that would really tie it all together.
Okay, let me find out about that.
But I like that idea. I think there's for the pay parking experience, which is part of the visitor experience. With the boat launch contracted now by the village to a business in town and sort of enforcing, effectively the only way to enforce the boat launch fees is if someone's not there is through the parking. So I think there's a good opportunity to bring this together and have parking sort of when we come to the end of the contract and review it and what we want to do next year for pay parking. I think there's opportunities for the village to have a direct control over all pay parking in town. And if we can get RMI funded to pay for the parking meters, that would be great. Then we don't have to eat that out of our general revenues as well. I think that's a very creative solution. Keep our taxes down. I know residents don't like pay, they don't like pay parking already, and I'm pretty sure they don't want to pay for parking meters. If I had to go out and poll people.
Yeah.
So that would be really an interesting, that'd be an interesting.
Yeah, as a visitor, I'm biased because of course I don't want any paid parking. But unfortunately,
I know.
over a 10-year period, I've lost that argument. But having that third party not involved would make it a little bit easier for businesses.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
We even have people come in here who like want to pay their parking ticket and then we can't do it that way. And then they have to pay with a credit card and there's still some people who don't like doing that.
Yeah.
And it's just so many little hiccups that would just be nicer. Like if someone comes in willingly wanting just to pay it and get it out of the way, that would be so easy.
Anyway, there's room for improvement.
Yeah.
So I like the opportunities and I like finding a way to use the RMI funding to pay for that core infrastructure to make it happen. That's good. Thank you.
And then we've just sort of been piecing together. So last time we really mainly looked at like the project outlines. And then this time I know we wanted to talk about goals. So I just pulled in a few. It always prints in a different color. I know what it looks like on screen. It's more the village's blue, but so just sort of pulling in the OCP village vision surrounding being a resort community and the council strategic plan vision. And then this just sort of leads a little bit into some goals. So I sort of took the ones that we had the last time, tried to make a couple little tweaks into what we're trying to accomplish with the projects that we talked about. And then I think what will be really beneficial, just be sort of choosing more of like the how to measure them. I think that visitor net promoter score that Stephanie spoke of, something that could be improved upon and hopefully will be improved upon. So, and the visitor satisfaction surveys. MRDT is also just one of the clearest ways that we can really see what the hotel rooms are doing. And tracking that, as well as I believe information comes in there on the length of stays too, right?
We can get that, yes.
Get that? Okay. So I think that those ideally we implement some more of these projects that are year-round. We start trying to make it more of like a well-known thing, even when people come in the summer. If they then find these other things and then they're looking for a day trip, just trying to, yeah, increase, I guess not a day trip, so we can't track it, but just sort of, yeah, the more opportunities we can create through the RMI and then look at over the years what that changes for the hotel stays. Obviously, there's always other factors that tie into this as well, but just really looking at that. Anyone have any thoughts, feedback on the goals? I'm also happy to like add more if you think that there's something missing.
Yeah, I might start, so, or if anybody else wants to start. I certainly agree with number 3, I have that one on my list there, so, so I was actually thinking like the metric would be like you said, a resident sentiment survey. And just so like number of residents that understand the positive impacts of tourism, or this is kind of what I was assuming as a goal, or number of local ambassadors that we can create sharing tourism experiences. So creating like a local ambassador program, which actually kind of sounds similar to hopefully what your pay parking thing sounds like. And then a resident sentiment survey that could go out, was I thought a good metric and a good goal. It sounds like they're kind of related with number 3. And then I guess my question was, we've got like seasonal tourism, which is fantastic, but looking at like accessibility and sustainable tourism, do we have any goals aligning with that? And then how can we put those forward?
The sustainability aspect.
I think making sure that whatever we're doing in tourism, we are trying to be sustainable in nature. We want tourism to last 100 years from now in this area, so we want to make sure that we're doing tourism in the right way. So whether that's, you know, what are we tracking? Like you could go like really off the beaten path with this and be like, so the number of refilled water bottles, like so that can track your number of visitors. How many people are refilling their water bottles? That's not a metric you're going to use for this, but like, you know what I mean? Just like kind of like really flipping the lens and ensuring that we're tracking those sustainable tourism initiatives, and then making sure that we've got, you know, I guess aligning our goals to ensure that accessibility and sustainability are weaved through each of them. Is kind of what I was thinking.
I know we had a previous goal was increase, and I think this was mainly focused around the accessible playground, but it was to increase the number of accessible / barrier-free amenities.
Yeah.
So even if it's like ensuring accessibility and sustainability practices are
I had that listed
implemented
here
when
we're looking at, you know, developing trails or picnic tables, or like I could go on and on about the picnic tables. But thank you. But just making sure that we have that lens through whatever our objectives are, and then reflecting that in our goals. So I don't know whether that's increased amenities and infrastructure within sustainability and accessibility, but just how we want to
ensure that we
don't lose track of that. Yeah, I think those are important pieces. We want to make sure that this is going to be a great place to live and visit for a long, long time.
Can we build in on sustainability in a different way? The repeat visits. And I think this builds on the let's go all Vegas in the lagoon with a lot of showing water.
I should
But
have said
it's
place.
but it's sustainability, but it's like we're not one and done. You can come back multiple times in the year and there's something new to see.
Correct.
That kind of sustainability, is that an aspect of sustainability?
It is, for sure. Because I mean, economically sustainable, because then you're not spending as much money to attract those things, right? But
It's also tagging in, like, right now, social media is a bit, a strong movement to attract tourism sustainably as well. And it's gonna, that metric is probably gonna get a lot wider.
Mhm.
And people want to be seen at certain individual, or want their pictures taken at certain places, and it's getting a lot bigger too, so.
no.
Does that give you?
just from that,
Go ahead.
sorry, it's just
No, go
in
ahead.
that same
No,
line,
no.
the government is also very much looking to support those type of projects, so it would be Albertans and Mark as well. If you have that language written in there.
Yeah, something like
I
that.
like that language. It's one of those, sometimes you look at something so much,
Yeah, I
and you're
know,
like,
yeah.
how am I missing this
Yeah.
like thing that obviously this should be in there?
Counselor Jackson.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have a swing going on in Canada. We're going back to our roots in that respect. And Rogers has just signed a huge contract with the hockey again, so hockey is back in the limelight. What I'm thinking of course, we've had the Northwest Mounted Police who are here. And maybe part of our goal should be to enhance that sort of history in Harrison. They've played a big role in the country. Yes, if I go to Rome, I go see the Trevi Fountain, but it's been there for like a long, long time. And they have a culture built on that. And maybe we need to think about what is our culture? Where are we going with it? That what's happened is a good thing because now we're thinking about it. And I might be really old fashioned, I know that, but I just believe that there's a shift in Canada. People are gonna take their holidays this year in this country. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful country. Which is good. So just as food for thought.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think under goal 3, I could definitely expand that a little bit. My main thought was sort of tying to the interpretive signage and the Stayalus history, but I agree that, and highlighting that not only are we getting visitors from throughout Canada, but I think there will be more European travelers coming here right now as well, and just sort of highlighting all Canadian aspects.
Would it be possible to sort of highlight the history of the resort when it was, the original hotels and those kind of things? Not in a way that competes with the Stahelis's history, but just sort of adds to it.
I think ideally, when we start looking at that signage
Yeah.
plan, even along sort of where their property is, perhaps, we can assist with
Yeah.
some formatting and things and
Okay.
encourage
Yeah,
them to
they
do some
are
things too.
doing their 100-year anniversary in the next little bit as well, so there could be some opportunity for overlap, so you're not duplicating costs and things like that, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
whatever those opportunities will look like. I know the 100-year of the golf course is first. Is that this year, next year?
Next year. I believe.
Next year, and then the 100-year of the resort follows.
Yeah.
So they're working on that, so we can hopefully leverage that and come up with something together.
Great. Does that give you enough, looking at people that are gonna have to do the hard work of actually writing it in a coherent way that sounds compelling and makes sense?
No, I think
But,
so.
thanks for the conversation and the comments. That's great. What are our next steps?
So,
To bring us to the
Yeah.
successful conclusion in less than 30 days. Which I'm looking at you and I know there's probably a fair bit of work left to do.
we're
And
doing
limited
okay on
time.
it.
Okay.
So the draft RDS needs to be submitted to the province by April 30th.
Yeah.
We need to bring that draft RDS to council, so that is going to be coming to them on April 22nd, which means we have until about April 16th before we need to get that to Amanda for preparation for
Put on agendas.
the agenda. I think that I have heard everyone's feedback. So what I think we could look to do, an in-person meeting would be very difficult between now and
Hmm.
the 17th. But I think Kaylee and me can get things in a pretty good place and look to email it out and in enough time for full review by the committee members and to provide any edits, feedback to the committee that way. Yeah. How does that sound?
When, no, I don't want to pin you on
Yeah.
it, because then how much work you have to do on this. When would you be able to circulate something, you think? A preliminary first draft, I guess, of this current
3 o'clock.
strategy.
I was almost gonna pull it together yesterday morning, but then Amanda had already got you to review a quick agenda anyway, so I think maybe by end of day tomorrow,
Oh, wow, okay,
pending no crises arise.
okay,
Otherwise, let's say
sometime early next week.
early next week.
Okay,
Will give us a bit more time.
Tomorrow would be ideal.
I know, everyone's got.
I know,
Yeah, let's say by the 9th, and then that would
Okay.
sort of give.
okay.
if-
And if we have any comments or
Yeah, then
feedback,
maybe take until,
we'll,
the
we can
13th and-
email them to myself or to whatever, email them to me. We'll make sure that everything is circulated to everyone. And then, hopefully we get to a nice soft landing on an initial draft by the 16th, when it needs to go into the package for council.
the only
And-
other comment,
Go
if
ahead.
I may, just, if for some reason, well, first it'll, potentially, there could be questions come back from the ministry as well, so there could always be shifts that we need to make later. And then, I was just gonna say, in our experience over the last few years, they have been open to conversations, and if something were to change, for example, say the one is kind of based on getting the approval from the ALC
Right,
to be able to do the project. So then if for some reason that fell through, then they have a amendment, like a project amendment.
Yeah.
So then we could always re-meet with the group if we felt we needed to come up with a whole new
Okay.
idea to talk about. So yeah, they just have been very open to conversations and working together if something were to need to change on either end.
and so it goes to council, council endorses. Is it still a draft plan that's sent out, or is it a final plan? Or do we have to get feedback from the province before we finalize it?
I believe that that's why it's technically a draft.
Plan?
Yes.
So we may have a need for the committee to get together once the provinces
Mhm.
give some feedback. It'd be nice actually for the committee to get together just to look at it again after the provinces, so you're all
Mhm.
current on it, you know what the provinces said.
And like I said, perhaps maybe we should, like, Stephanie was saying, maybe looking at the next step of what, and so we're a little bit more ahead of the game on what direction
Yeah.
to go forward. So we have a lot of time to really, and it doesn't have to be every month, but like once a year or something, so
We can put that on our radar to sort of nowish after budgets are done, to go and
Yeah.
see how projects are for the summer and what was completed in the previous year and what's anticipated. That'd be as well.
it's good to know, like, we get to get perspective on
Yeah.
what's getting used a lot,
Yeah.
what wasn't
Yeah.
perhaps beneficial to the community.
Cross fingers that in 3 years' time,
Yeah,
we'll be in
yeah.
a little better position to sort of jump
We'll
into
be ready to
it.
go if we have a strategy, right?
Yeah.
So, sorry, I do have one question though. I just thought of it. With moving the canoe project to this current RDS strategy, are you worried about the budget allocations, or we're just gonna be bumping up some of the other projects, so it's actually gonna work out better overall?
It'll just work out better overall.
We've got more money for fountains.
Yeah, there we go.
And I apologize for the McLean trail. I believe we were asking about the pump track or the mountain bike did you get back on that or?
Yeah, I have a cost estimate for one that would be non-dirt based. So whatever other material they use, sorry, it's not my area of expertise. But I did have a cost estimate. Depending, it's obviously, of course, depending on size. And one upwards of around 150,000.
Okay,
Dirt would be way cheaper.
Way cheaper.
obviously.
it would be more fitting the
Sort of the keeping it a bit more of a natural environment.
natural environment. Thanks, but yeah,
And then before that, would you, like, so you would get the quote, put that into the RDS, then we get to see like what the kind of project outline would look like? And then,
I'm gonna send those project outlines just updated from what
Okay.
they went out before. I think what I'll sort of do is sort of keep it broad
yeah,
for the most part and sort of give like examples of what could be included.
right,
Because then a lot of that site is going to be, once we get the approval ideally, then it'll be based around like actually getting in there, seeing what could actually go where with existing trees and everything and waterways that are in there and things like that.
if we could make it like a big playground, that would be pretty, that could be some sort of incentive for people to come here and stay, bring their bikes. I understand that that's done everywhere, but we are only an hour and a half away from Vancouver, and there's nothing like that other than Whistler. So to be out here on this direction, I don't see anything like that.
I think there is one on
Sure.
Highway 7 towards Hope.
there's a pump
An
track.
event, yeah.
Yeah, there isn't hope, yeah, but like from here to Vancouver though.
Oh, in that direction, correct. CO Cook.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to point out to the committee that depending on the length of the committee and duration, because this plan and funds related to it haven't actually been added to the financial plan. So we will require endorsement from council or council resolutions. There are potential for committee input at that stage when we find out whether the province approves our plan and once the funds come in. So that's just another.
Okay.
Another one on the radar, so
Yeah.
the committee isn't disbanded for 3 years.
Oh, great.
It may be ongoing.
Generally is.
It
Go
will
ahead.
be more for this fiscal year.
For sure.
Because in order for us to spend funds, we would have to get council
Correct.
permission to do so back into the financial plan. But moving forward, of course, it would now make, like, the 26th plan would be brought forward.
Great. Is there anything else from anyone on this meeting? We're gonna circulate things, opportunity to comment via email. We'll try and pull it all together and make sure you're copied on whatever goes to council. And then we'll circle back with the committee and make sure you all know council considers it. Thanks, Stephanie, for hanging in there till down to the last days. Great.
Excited to see this all come together.
And certainly on my behalf, Christy and staff, looking at all the people who've done so much work on very short notice, digging into sort of the ideas that came up and try and find out if they're within the realm of possibility and let us dream and maybe have a few of them come true. So thank you.
Welcome. Thank you
Also,
for all
I
your
make a
help.
point of thanking the committee for their work as well. Having Stephanie and co is definitely has been a very positive experience so far.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
With nothing else, I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Richard Fife. Discussion, all in favor, and we are adjourned. Thank you all at 1:55. Our meeting.
I was making it seem like, oh, they're gonna sell this thing so bad.
Get a bump up.
Thank you.
Great. It's been a really fun project to work on. Really enjoyed this.
I forgot.
This is one of the
Back
functions.
and forth, but Eric just missed that.